Indiana Jones, Indiana Jones, Indiana. It's a podcast about Indiana Jones. Every movie, 1 minute at a time. Indiana Jones Minute.
Welcome back to the Indiana Jones Minute. This is the podcast where we break the news to you that your son is the film Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, 1 minute at a time. I'm Tom Taylor.
I'm Pete Mummert, and I just have to say that Jerry really can be a little impetuous.
It's not the worst thing.
I'm Gerald Christopher. Well, why didn't he finish school? Porter.
And joining us once again, superstar guest extraordinaire. He's been with us for every single Indiana Jones movie. Our old pal from the St. Augustine Alligator Farm and Zoological Park, John Brueggen.
Hello, everyone.
John Brueggen, thank you for coming on the show. We have been alligator wrestling with this movie. And we finally have someone who can help us and coach us, like an honest-to-goodness Indiana Jones fan who is, you've done all the hard spelunking on all of these movies and on snakes and on alligators and on everything. And we're thrilled to have you here, finally, for Crystal Skull.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for that great introduction.
If there is such a thing as a hands down fan favorite guest and host favorite guest, it would be hard to top John Brueggen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wow, I don't even know what to say, except that if you're going by the votes, when we did that voting thing the first season, I voted for myself a lot.
Oh, sure. That's what you got to do. It worked out.
That's how it is. Yeah.
Put you over the top. Well, thanks for coming and helping us out with Crystal Skull. And before we even get into minute 71, I do just want to ask, John, one of the reasons you're a fan favorite is that you are among the most diehard Indiana Jones fans. You've got the collection, you've got the knowledge, you go deep into the books and the show and the movies and everything. We have to ask right at the top, are you a fan of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
Yeah, I think that it has its flaws, but I honestly prefer watching it over Temple of Doom, and I watched it again, of course, a couple nights ago in preparation with you guys, and I had a good time.
Nice.
It's got problems, but I enjoyed it.
I think that's how I feel too. Like I feel like there's a lot, to me, seems like there's a lot wrong with this movie, but it's fun to watch.
Well, I learned something in doing these by the minute. We got into really, in Last Crusade, you guys really got into this watching of each individual character and how they kind of seem like they made buffoons out of a couple of them. But we watched that again the other night, and I was fearful of it after listening to it minute by minute. And honestly, Marcus Brody didn't seem as bad as I had remembered after the show, and I felt like okay, that was a good romp as well. It's a different thing to just dig into a minute of every piece of a show like this.
Yeah,
yeah,
I feel like
you get a different experience when you watch a movie straight through.
That's right.
That's the way I recommend you do it.
That's called watching a movie.
Yeah.
But you said something. So you enjoy this more than Temple of Doom. Why is that? What is it about?
Temple of Doom was never my favorite, and that had to do with it was as you guys have discussed many times, it's a darker film, and it didn't have the MacGuffin that kind of excited me, and so it just never sat as going to be my favorite movie, and it's still in fourth place at this moment.
Wow. Okay.
All right.
Cool. Yeah. I think there's probably quite a few people that would agree with you on that.
Yeah. Well, and so I just want to say happy birthday to Fred Sorensen. We're recording right around his birthday, and
nice.
and he's if you don't know who that is, that's the guy who played Jock Lindsay. And since we last recorded, I got to spend a little time with him in Orlando. There's Disney has a thing called Jock Lindsay's Hangar Bar. It's all decked out like Jock Lindsay would have retired there, and it's got props from all the films and everything. And he invited fans out for his birthday and just said, "I'm going to be at the Hangar
Oh, that's
Bar,
awesome.
and if
That's
you
really
want to
cool.
come, show up." And so I made. No one has made a Funko Pop of him, so I made a Funko Pop, attached a little fish to a fishing line,
Wow.
and he's got a New York cap and everything. So I wrapped that up in snakeskin newspaper and wrapping
Wow.
paper and gave it to him, and he really seemed to enjoy it. He had a good time, just talking to the fans and signing autographs, and they had a big Reggie cake for him and stuff. It was cool.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Man,
And you've also hung out with Karen Allen.
I know, I was going to say.
Yeah, I didn't know. Maybe what I'll do is hold back some of that story and hope that you invite me back next week.
We'll see. Hey, we'll see how this first one goes. 1 minute at a time. That's the motto of the show. 1 minute at a time. And today's minute is 71. Let's just see how this goes. This is the one that begins with Indy yelling at Ox one more time to go get help. And it ends with Mutt offering to help Indy out of the quicksand with a rat snake.
Pete,
Well, and I just want to, sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to say this is minute 71. And I feel like we've come full circle because I did my first episode with you was minute 71 in Raiders.
Oh, my
nice.
God. I
really
didn't know that. I work here and I didn't know that. Yeah, it's in the Well of Souls.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow.
So the snakes come in about 71 every time, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it is. Pete, I appreciate you bestowed me with this adjective of being impetuous. Is that so the way Indy kind of says it, Marion says like Mutt can be impetuous and Indy's like there are worse qualities. What do you think of that, Pete? You're a guy who kind of is a little buttoned up and you like timetables.
I do. Maybe not as much as you like to say, but I am more comfortable, I think, generally with a little bit of structure. But it's funny. I mean, since you were kind enough to bring that up, I actually had a note about you here.
Aw.
And I was curious, Jerry, if you had a child you didn't know about, what would the mother say to you to kick it off? Like, what would this kid can be a little, what would it be?
This kid can't find his burrito.
This kid's car is a biohazard.
I figured if it was, reflecting on my life, I feel like it would begin with a dig. Like it would be something like, well, at least this kid's car isn't a biohazard. It would be something like that. And it would probably then be bragging about, it would be one of those double conversations where it's like, well, the genes are yours, but not any of the good ones. So that's how I imagine it'd be kicked off. Yeah, at least he can tie his shoes.
Right.
Is Indy impetuous?
We talk about that. We say he makes it up as he goes along, but we kind of champion that as a great quality to have. I mean, look, do you think he planned on opening up the classroom office window and walking out?
That's
Good question.
Yeah, it wasn't on his list of the
Yeah.
things to do today. Yeah.
No, so he is impetuous, and he's that's kind of his coat of arms here, and so it does make sense that he and Mutt are related.
I feel a little bit like he's impetuous, like say a free jazz musician breaks the rules of music. Like I feel that he is impetuous sometimes because he's already been systematic about setting things up to work.
Oh, okay. He's impetuous as a last resort.
Well, he kind of leaves himself a lot of space to improvise.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, sometimes he has to, but I feel like if he hadn't laid the foundation of, the education and knowing 3,000 languages and, all this stuff that he can magically do, I think it would make being impetuous much worse of a quality for him.
I'm going to proffer this. psychological peek into Indiana Jones. I think he is a reactionary person. When you look at the movies, there's again we discuss. Yes, he was in South America trying to get the idol, but so much of his decisions, maybe his impetuosity, is is just a reaction to what something does, somebody does to him, or somebody comes to him, like top men come and visit him. He's
Mhm.
just in his regular day, right? Mutt comes to him and sort of intercepts. He did have just. I mean, I guess he has to be a little bit fleet-footed in life, where it's like I don't see him planning much. The only time I really can think about it is when he's kind of like, besides he throws his gun in the valise. You know what a cautious person I am, Marcus. You're like, okay, at that little moment he's planning, but in the bigger picture, I don't know this guy to plan anything. Like he reacts. He's reactionary to his entire life. I couldn't tell you a single damn thing that he decided to do.
He must have hella good lesson plans in some form because somebody's teaching his classes.
Yeah.
There is some groundwork laid.
Like
somewhere.
if no one knocked on his door, then I assume he would just be, in his classroom teaching all the time. And yet I get that that never happens.
Right, because people are always knocking on his door. There's always
Right.
cool stuff out there to get.
But it's never him
getting.
saying, I'm taking this semester off.
Maybe it's because he's such a bookworm that he never reads the newspapers. Oh my gosh, the Nazis are on the tail of the Ark of the Covenant. I gotta get out there. He doesn't have to wait for somebody to come get him. Hey, I have a question. We got Marion and Indy. They're sinking in the I keep forgetting. This is dry
sand.
Dry sand. Okay. And they're sinking, and she tells him that first of all, I do like his reaction to the name Henry. Henry, good name. Gives a tiny little thumbs up, and he's like kind of into it. He's a good name, solid. I like it. And but she says, yeah, he's your son, Henry Jonesthethird. His name is not Henry Jonesthethird. Mutt. Like where's the name Jones come into that? She never married Indiana Jones, so how could Mutt's name be Henry Jones?
Maybe it's his middle. Maybe Jones is his middle name.
Oh, maybe. Well, I still wouldn't make him the third though.
Maybe Jones the Third is his middle name.
It's all one word.
Maybe.
That's actually, you're right. His name is Mutt Williams.
Yeah.
But you know what's weird about this is you think the math I'm doing in my brain is like Marion's like in the hospital, like in the whatever they call the baby ward. The maternity ward. Thank you. And she's like filling it out with nobody looking. And she's like, it's Williams. She's like, no, I'm going to put it's Henry Jones. Like no one else knows it. This is apparently the first time she's said
Henry
it
Jones,
in her life.
Williams the Third doesn't know it because when he meets Indiana Jones, it doesn't seem to be any kind of red flag that this guy has his name.
Right.
And he has the same name that's the second.
So it could be
like if my name is Henry Jones the Third, and my mom tells me to go meet a guy whose name is Henry Jones the Second, I might start to think about that.
I mean, I guess he never looks at his birth certificate. Who does?
I think it might be, and I think that I feel like she's divulging some secret here.
Yeah, I get. What do you mean?
Like she put that on his birth certificate, even though that is his official real name, even though no one else knows it.
Yeah,
maybe we're following the whole Mexico thing a little further because like in Aztec culture, they would give children a secret name that nobody knew except for the person.
Oh.
And then they would also have a name that other people knew. So,
but wait a minute, if you give the person the name, then two people know it.
Yeah, that's why Aztec people kill their mothers as soon as they get their names. Isn't that a thing?
Correction, it's the Egyptians who did this, not the Aztecs.
I don't know. John, do you care to weigh in here?
Or you're just staying away from it completely?
What is his
an
name?
Aztec expert.
Egyptians.
What is his name?
Well, his name's Mutt. That's what he wants to be called.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
I like it.
All right. Fair
Now,
enough.
did we need this? Okay, this moment is we were saying since Marion showed up, we've been saying how their interplay, Indy's and Marion's, is very kind of sitcom-y. Like there's kind of I don't know, George and Gracie kind of one-liners to each other and sort of sitcom like setups and stuff. And this is one of those. Like, you know, he's like, oh, he's a good kid. Get off his case about school. Who cares about school or whatever? And as soon as he finds out that he's his son, he's like, why didn't you make him stay with school and stuff? And does this moment need to be like funny like that? Does it need to be light and a gag? Or could in some other version of this movie, could he be like, oh my God, like kind of coming off of like, oh, he's a good kid. He's a solid kid. And then he finds out that he's his son. He's like, oh my God, Mutt's my son? That's awesome. I really like Mutt. This is good. I'm proud of that guy. All right, rock and roll. We're on an adventure together, me and my son. And like maybe he'd get annoyed with him later and be like, hey, you know, listen, motorcycles are good and everything, but you got to have an education and stuff. Like, does it have to be such a kind of like knee-jerk gag, not gag reflex, but gag response to this news?
I'm going to say yes. And my note also says Tom and Jerry will both hate this line, but I really love it. And I also like it that it's a little bit of a misdirection because she says he's his son. And then Indy starts with, why the hell? And you think he's going to say, didn't you say I had a son or something like that? But it's, like, it's funny because it's why the hell didn't you make him finish school right after he said, don't pressure him about finishing school. I thought it was a great line.
I'm going to say, do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do.
Which is almost playing at the
just,
moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically the answer is yes. I mean, Tommy, that would have been a completely different movie that you just described, and maybe a very good one. But that is not at all this movie. This right here is I'm waiting for Chubsy Ubsy to jump into the dry sand from the Little Rascals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just there's something about this feels like a Little Rascals. Like do. I mean,
But do I want that right now? Do I want that in my Indiana Jones movie? I don't. Again, if I'm comparing it to Raiders, that would never happen. But I can't compare everything to Raiders. Maybe I should just let it go.
It's where we've landed. I'll say this, Pete. I fall in between. This is a line. This is a tone that I wouldn't really want. No, I don't need this humor here. This humor. We find out Indiana Jones has a son, but you know what? The way they pull it off is pretty good. I think it's funny.
I think you could have played it straight. You're already, waist deep in one of the three dangers of the fire swamp, which makes it comical as it goes. So it's, it's just one of those. It's already comical, and he's worried about the void collapse. Boom, there's a void collapse. It's just it already acts like it's a comedy, and you could have played the line straight, I think.
Yeah, that'd be like interrupt this kind of steady flow of comedy with an actual just moment of like, oh my God, wait, I have a son, and B, it's Mutt, who I already kind of like. I'm kind of on that kid's side. This is all right. Like I would have liked that. That would have been fun.
I think that would have been good too.
That would have been, but there's nothing about the dressing of this movie that would ever suggest that.
Yeah,
I disagree. Yeah. Like I think there's a lot about the dressing of the movie that would suggest, like Mutt having his face covered with tears when he sees what's happening to Oxley. Like I feel like there's a lot of really deep emotion in this movie. It just it comes in strange places.
Yeah, they keep bringing it in with people who we don't know.
Yeah,
like we like Oxley. He seems like a nice guy, and it's sad that he's crazy and that he can't connect to Mutt. But it's like we don't know these people that well. Like I would love to see that kind of treatment with Indiana Jones, who's the guy I came to see the movie for.
Well, John, let me ask you a question. Does Indy actually think that Henry is a good name? Because if he did, yes. Now, the obvious is, why is his name Indiana then if he thinks Henry is such a good name?
Well, maybe after the passing of his father, he's had time to reflect on what that name means to his family and himself personally.
I like
that. Makes sense.
God, that's a great answer. It is. That's a great. I was just like, I got the old snake guy now. But no, you're right. He is. He's softer. He is reflecting more. He's mellowed out. I can totally see that.
Because it's such a great answer, I want to throw you a snake here, John. Which is I guess how someone would throw you a bone.
It's a
in
lot
the
of bones.
In the script, there's it calls out that when they are in the sand pit here, it says they speak, but the constriction from the sand pit pressing in on their chests makes it hard for them to breathe.
Mhm.
Now that was interesting because that felt a lot like a snake description.
Right. Absolutely. That's how constrictors would kill their prey, and so it's not crushing, it's not breaking bones when a constrictor constricts something. It's every time they take a breath in, it gets a little tighter, and and they can't breathe out again. It just gets tighter and tighter each time.
Oh, I never thought about that. That's amazing.
That's horrifying.
It is horrifying.
So what if you encounter a boa constrictor, some type of, I guess, a python, some type of constricting snake, and it starts to envelop you that way? How do you just? I mean, what do you do? Not breathe in? Do you just like exhale, or do you open up your tummy so you're like?
Well, yeah, actually, I probably said that backwards. It's every time you breathe out, so your chest gets a little smaller, and then they're going to constrict, and then you're trying to take that breath in again. And so, yes, the few people that I know that have been involved in that situation have thankfully had other people there that knew what to do. So almost always, if a snake is constricting you, it's bitten you first. It's trying to feed, so it's got a hold of you, and then it uses that as the anchor, and it throws its coils around you. And the way to stop that is to have somebody get the snake by the tail and unwrap it the other direction, and then deal with the teeth. The teeth are in these pythons. The teeth are very long. There's hundreds of very sharp needle-like teeth that are embedded in you. And so, one of our procedures is to have a bite kit with a credit card or two in it, so you can slide that up under the teeth, because they're all designed so that they are facing, that they can't, a prey item can't get out. Once it's going down the throat, you can't pull back. The teeth are all facing the throat, right? So if you slide a credit card down in there, then you push the teeth back out of the way and you try to get yourself out.
It's like picking a lock.
Yeah.
Wow.
A little bit, yeah.
And does the snake look at you like, huh?
Like, wait a minute.
Like, whoa. Its teeth are now faced back. It can't pull them back out or whatever. Can't pull them forwards, really.
Yeah, and it's almost always a case of mistaken identity. I worked with a guy who
You're not a mouse.
Right. I worked with a guy that
we Paul.
We called this guy the other white meat because he got bitten by everything, and he made the foolish mistake of handling a prey item, a rabbit. And then he went to get the snake out of the enclosure. He smelled like a rabbit. So, of course, he got bit. And the thing wrapped him up, and I unwrapped him and, got to lecture him the whole time about how stupid he was. And told him, go wash the blood off your hands and don't handle the food before you touch the snake. It's just kind of common sense.
I really want to see that from the point of view of the snake, where he sees the guy and the guy fades and turns into a rabbit.
Right.
Rabbit.
But then it's like, as you go around the rabbit, you're like, this is a huge rabbit. I'm gonna be set till Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I'm gonna have leftovers.
Actually, how well can snakes see? Like, what does it see if it's looking at a person or a rabbit?
Well, these constrictors can sense heat, so they get a kind of a general idea of the size of something by the heat signature it's giving off, and then they see all right. It's not wonderful color vision or anything, but I think most of the time they see a hand, it smells like food, and they bite that and they start wrapping, and then there's a whole bunch more to it. And truthfully, there have been cases of people in Southeast Asia that have been killed by pythons because that whole process started. But there's no way the snake's big enough to consume the person. So the snake ends up crawling off and leaving a constricted person behind, but it's too late for him.
Oh, that's wasteful.
Come on.
That's very wasteful, right?
At least compost it or something.
Well, so what if you wore you wore boots that were sprinkled with cinnamon and gloves that were sprinkled with garlic or things that snakes don't like? Would that help keep you from getting bitten?
Well, I'd say that the things that they sell on the internet to keep snakes away probably don't actually work. And so
It's the internet for you.
cinnamon may not be a style, but really just not smelling like food is the biggest key, and paying attention to where your hands are. If you're going to feed a snake in its enclosure, part of the reason we take a snake out, feed it somewhere else, and then put it back where it lives so that it doesn't get in the habit of every time you open the door, I might be fed, and striking at the door. And so if you kind of follow these procedures, you're all right. But if you're going to feed it in the enclosure, then do it on a set of 3-foot tongs instead of having your hand in there.
Wow, seems reasonable.
Yeah, right.
Well, so I mean, so when I think of a constrictor, I think it's like the entire snake is a big muscle, and
That's true.
He knows what he's doing. So I'm imagining it's wrapped itself around somebody, it's coiled, and then you are walking over and grabbing its tail. And I mean, it's kind of cartoonish. You like unravel it from its tail. I mean, is the snake isn't strong enough to combat that? Like once you start the unraveling process, it's like he's like, oh, what are you doing?
Well, the few times I've seen it, it really hurts the guy that's being bitten, because when you grab it by the tail, the thing bites harder and squeezes harder, It's like, oh, wait, my prey's getting away. And then, so, you're fighting some muscle, but it's doable.
Yeesh. Well, I have what I think is an obvious question, or maybe has an obvious answer, but I've been wrong before. Is it ever a good idea to use a snake as a rope? Because that's what Mutt does here with his mom and with Indiana Jones. Do snakes make good ropes? Is it good for anybody, including the snake, to just have one guy grabbing on one end and somebody else grabbing on the other and just pull the weight of a human being? Does that work?
No. In fact, if you're holding a pet snake and if you even gently kind of pull, put both hands on it and kind of pull a little bit, you can feel the vertebra pop a little, it's like you're popping your back, and it'll make you go, oh, what did I just do? And so the snake would be very uncomfortable, if not dead, by the time you were done yanking on it like that. It's kind of creepy to feel it. So I think most people would go, okay, no, even if you called it a rope, I can't hold on to this and do that.
I think it's odd that they're surrounded by foliage and trees and shrubs and stuff, and there's not a branch or something that's not living.
Well, this is called a toxic xeric upland, and that's what causes the dry area. And so there's something that poisoned that area there. There's no plants growing in the sand, and then there's no vines that will grow anywhere in that area.
Huh. Oh my God!
Really? I just made that up. I'm just.
I was trying to get my head around the idea that this movie knew what it was talking about.
I know, you sounded so informed.
No, but Karen Allen was in an interview. I don't know if it was a recent one. I heard it not too long ago, where she was joking about that. She said, "Yeah, Mutt has to go look for a snake because apparently there's no vines in the jungle."
Well, now Mutt calls this a rat snake.
Yes, he does.
And, A, what is a rat snake? And B, how would Mutt know that just any snake that the first snake he grabs in the jungle is not poisonous? Why would he know that? And why would he know it's a rat snake?
And C, do rat snakes live in the southern hemisphere?
Everything is wrong about all of these statements. As the Well of Souls was true that there were no native snakes in there, this is not a native snake to South America. It's not a rat snake, and there's no way he would have found it where he is. So this one is called an olive python, or people call it it's from Papua New Guinea, so a Papuan olive python, something like that. And it gets that big. This is a 13-foot animal. It was a real snake. I heard some guys doing a review of this movie not too long ago, and they said one of their complaints about it was the CGI snake, and so there are behind the scene. There's some footage of the first time that Shia met the snake. He went running out of the room. He was not not a fan of snakes at all, so he had to kind of work with a trainer. There's a trainer there that his name's Jules Sylvester. And that was his snake. He brought it in and worked with the actors until everybody was comfortable.
Now, wait, I have a fantastic question about all this.
Okay.
I have never heard, I'm not a snake expert, but I've never heard of a rat snake. But
Okay.
everyone on Earth has heard of a python. So why did they rename the existing python a rat snake?
I really don't
Thereby
know.
making their movie even further inaccurate.
The rat snakes are pretty common here. There's red rat snakes and yellow rat snakes and black rat snakes, and they're interestingly they're named because that's their color and they eat rats. But they only get about 5 or 6 feet long. They are constrictors, but they wouldn't make a good rope, and they wouldn't be found in South America either.
Well, I kind of like that because it's almost like Mutt is doing what Indy sometimes seems to do, and he's just saying something authoritatively that is completely false.
Well, and so Indy's the one that's right here when he says that's not a rat snake.
There you go.
He says rats. Actually, he says rat snakes don't get that big, and he's right.
Yeah.
He's absolutely right.
So
Well,
would that hurt the snake? Like even in real life, like them filming this, would that the way they're tossing it around, is that painful for the snake, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that python in Temple of Doom probably landed rougher than this snake ever did. But when we were on the campsite there, they toss a snake. So I think everything I saw was probably all right. They did make, Stan Winston or somebody made a rubberized version of this same snake. And so the thing at the last part of the scene where he throws it in the jungle, you can see how that thing's kind of bouncing around, more rubbery. And that's a fake piece. But Shia does have an interview where he says, he uses Spielberg's name. He's always talks on a first name basis, and maybe because you've worked with him, you can do that. But since we kind of know he got at odds with Steven, it's a little off-putting when he says, well, Steven kept telling me Steven would put an X in the sand and tell me that the snake's head had to hit right there. And he said, that's impossible. You can't just put a snake's head wherever you want to. And so he was, he's kind of got an attitude about the whole thing as he's doing the interview. But you can, there's a lot of muscle. You can kind of feel how it's going. And that snake was good for the camera because it had some motion and it was going to move around a little bit. But I imagine it'd take a few shots, but you could put it where you want it.
Wow. All right. Yeah. I mean, but I have to assume that when they're actually pulling people out of the sand, that's got to be the fake snake, right? Like the filmmakers aren't going
anything. I mean, well, they're not. They're not pulling it all that much. So I don't know if you guys discussed this, but the way the sand pit is made is that there are these giant cylinders under the stage. And so they're 8 foot by like 30 inches. And so they're standing in this cylinder and they push it up to the top and put the sand around it. And when they pull the cylinder floor down, it backfills with the sand. So it looks like they're being sucked into this sand pit. And it reverses. So when they push the cylinder up, they look like they're being pulled out of the thing. So you can just have a hold of the snake and be pushed towards it.
That's cool.
Wow.
Yeah,
that works.
It's cool. Yeah. And they go through all the trouble of Indy explaining that it's a dry sand pit. And then you have the Folio guys adding all these gurgling noises that kind of undo.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
I noticed
It's really weird.
Yeah, it is. It's, I don't know.
Now, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of surprised they didn't just go ahead and use the Burmese python. So on one of the movie posters for Crystal Skull, there's a snake, and it is a Burmese python. And so that heralds back to, Jock Lindsay's snake. Reggie was a Burmese python.
Oh.
There was a Burmese python in the Well of Souls. There was a Burmese python being eaten in Temple of Doom. It kind of would have been a tie that brought it all together, but instead they pick a pretty drab snake, which is nice. I mean, if it were scaled down and didn't have much color, maybe just a little bit more of a pattern, it could pass as a rat snake. But you're going through a lot of trouble to convince people it's a rat snake in an area where rat snakes aren't supposed to be.
Right. I almost, in a way, I like that idea. Like the movie is like it's given up completely on trying to be accurate to the point where it's like aggressively inaccurate. Like, who cares? Whatever.
But if is an actual Papua New Guinean python venomous?
No, none
okay.
of the pythons are venomous. They're all constrictors.
Okay. Oh, so when they bite you, they're just hurting you. Like they're not.
They're just using it as leverage. They're holding on while they get their body around you.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Oh man.
And then the teeth are designed to, point backwards.
Yeah.
That's very much a bite first, ask questions later type of thing.
Right.
It's like let me hold this thing and then I'll figure out if it's a rabbit or the other white meat.
Right. Exactly.
What's interesting is we get, between the two main sort of topics that Indy is faced with, all of a sudden he has a son, and his greatest fear, he's confronted with snakes. It's like, the snake one is much scarier than Indy finding out he has like a kid who's like 23 or whatever.
Well, I was thinking about that. It's almost like a blessing in disguise. It's almost like, well, I'm going to tell you some bad news, but first I'm going to tell you some really bad news that's not as important, so that when you hear the kind of bad news, it's not going to seem like bad news at all.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, you've got a son. Oh, here's a really, really scary snake.
Wait until you're about to be faced with your worst, oldest, deepest fear.
Yeah.
Then I'll break the news to you.
But but is it bad news to Indy to find out that Mutt is his son?
See, that's what bugs me. It should, I know it's a movie and I know it's going for certain tones and stuff, but in life, if you knew some guy and you like some kid who could be like the age that he could be your son, and you liked him, and then you found out he was your son, you wouldn't be like, oh no. Or like, you wouldn't be furious. You wouldn't be like mad at you obviously have emotions and feelings. Hey, I take it back. You might be furious.
I think you might be furious.
Like even in this movie.
But I mean, you would suddenly dawn on you like, I have a son that I never got to have any input into his life or any.
Right.
That could
but
actually
you would have
really
that
angry.
kind of real feeling. Like,
Yeah.
I would like to see that from Indiana Jones, because I think I think we even like get pieces of that later on in this movie. And I don't know. I'd like to see something kind of real.
Yeah.
Is that asking too much? We got a rat snake where there shouldn't be one. It's not even a rat snake. Just want a little human emotion.
In J.W. Rinsler's book, there's a nice drawing of this moment, and the snake is a passable green anaconda. It's drawn really well, and that would fit for the area. Green anacondas are certainly in captivity. They're really fat, heavy bodied. They maybe just wouldn't make a good enough rope.
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
Trying to toss one of those would be a challenge.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, how much would a rat snake or a non-rat? How much would a python like this weigh?
Well, Shia says it weighed 50 pounds, and I think he's about 25 pounds over. I think that's a skinny. Really? It's a skinny snake. Even at 13 feet, it's pretty slim. We have some big reticulated pythons at work that are every bit of 13 feet and longer, and they are more like 55, 60 pounds, but they're really heavy bodied.
I feel like you'd have to be in really, really, really good shape to hold 50 pounds and then toss part of it.
Yeah. Well, it's around
and he's not. So that's an exaggeration for sure. It's a workout no matter, even if you're not tossing them. If they're moving and they're constantly, you put your hand out and get a little bit of snake and draw it back into you, and you're trying to do some sort of show or educational program, and it makes it exciting for the guests, but you are just slap worn out by the end of the program.
Well, speaking of reticulated pythons at work, coming in over the long reticulated wire. This just in from Professor Christy Porter. I got nothing. It's not my fault. It's not my fault.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't got stuff.
Yeah, sometimes I think this was that this, this minute is like, it's so big. You're like, Indiana Jones has a son, and it's either like huge or you're like, nah, I got nothing.
Well, here's the thing. We haven't really said this yet. I mean, it's like, does everyone sitting in the theater, have they known that Mutt is his son since he first showed up on screen? And this is not a surprise for anybody except Indiana Jones?
I think so. I think I figured out that he was the son, or I didn't see a lot of spoilers, and I didn't know that Karen Allen was going to pop up as his mom, but I think I knew.
Oh, really?
I figured out earlier in the movie that this was going to be his son.
It just, I mean, I have a younger, adventurous kid
Yeah.
tied to an older Indiana Jones. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it could go any other way, really.
Yeah.
Well, John, I think this went well enough that we should probably invite you back next week.
Oh, good. I got some good Karen Allen stories for you.
Oh, good.
Awesome.
This will be good. Before people come back next week, where could they find you? You run the St. Augustine, the alligator farm.
Yeah, so it's just briefly, it's the oldest attraction in Florida. It's been around over 127 years now.
That's
and
amazing,
man.
It is not an alligator farm in truth. It's a kind of a difficult name to get away from because it's been called that for so long. But it's the only zoo in the world where you can see every kind of crocodilian. So there's 24 species, and you can see them all at our place. But so we're best known for that. But we have monkeys and birds and Komodo dragons and king cobras and kind of cool stuff like that.
Awesome.
I would like to add that when I was in St. Augustine, I had the great fortune to visit the alligator 24 species crocodilian park, and it was absolutely fantastic. It really was.
Thank you.
It was well worth it. And
Awesome.
I would recommend to anybody, if you're anywhere in the United States, to go.
Thank you, Jerry.
It was. The one thing I remember is at the cassowary.
Yeah.
That thing, and I remember you saying, you're like, oh, that thing's beak is razor sharp. And it was just walking around like, uh-huh. Uh-huh. Like it kind of just kept walking around like, uh-huh.
Yeah,
I kept staring at it.
They have these killing toes. They have 3 toes on their feet, and the inner toe is sharp like a dagger. And they're fruit eaters. They don't need to kill things to eat, but they're kind of nervous, even though they're like the 3rd largest bird in the world. There's scars. There's scars on the trees in the exhibit because the bird walks by and freaks out because it saw its shadow and then attacks the tree, right?
Wow.
So yeah, when I introduce that bird, I tell people I'd rather catch 14 crocodiles than mess with that bird.
So it's like a real life present day velociraptor.
Yeah, we have a sign up
Sounds
of
like it, yeah.
we have a sign with Deinonychus because it has a killing toe, and it was about the same size, and so we have a sign that shows similarities between Deinonychus and the cassowary.
Wow.
Man.
Imagine having a killing toe.
Yeah, but like also you're like the most skittish, like self-nervous creature on the face of the earth, and you have those weapons that you
Yeah.
just easily use.
It's not a good combination. People have actually been eviscerated by this bird. It's a really scary animal.
Why am I laughing?
And I saw them. I saw them in the wild in Australia, and I paid a guide who took me out to see them, and we found the males. They're odd, so they breed. The female lays eggs, but the male tends the nest, and the female leaves, and he raises the young. And so he found us a male with these 3 subadult babies, and they're wandering around. And I want to get these photos, and he says, just don't get between the male adult bird and one of its babies, and that'll piss it off, and you'll be in trouble. And so I squat down and I'm shooting these photos, and one of the babies wanders around behind me as I'm sitting still and then cries because it can't see its mother or its father, sorry. And the its head perks up like a velociraptor and stares at me. And I got as small as I could and let that bird keep circling the other way. And it was an uncomfortable moment for sure.
Wow. Oh my God.
I totally imagine a Bugs Bunny. Now, wait a minute. I was just leaving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exit stage right. Well, John, thanks for coming today. And everyone, thanks for listening today. And please come back next week for minute 72 of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull right here on the Indiana Jones Minute.
He's your son.
Huh?
There were crickets, actually. There were crickets after that.
Because it wasn't very funny.